Watching Newzroom Afrika's continuing coverage of the devastation in KwaZulu-Natal, where floods have left hundreds of people dead this week. A developing story that we're just hearing about is about an 8-year-old child who is still unaccounted for. An effort now to find that child this morning. Ziyanda Ngcobo, senior reporter, is at the scene. Ziyanda, give us more on the circumstances of this child's disappearance and what the community says happened.
So as we wait for the delegation of the Motipes, the Amazulu King and the Premier, we are now in the Sunshine area where you can see there's an excavator right behind me, Itembekile, which is a part of the efforts to try and find this 8-year-old girl who is believed to be trapped under the rubble. You can see my colleague Gift Nkosi showing you those visuals, and to my right, Tembekile, there is a concerted community effort to dig and really try and find where this 8-year-old girl could possibly be. We understand that an elderly woman was initially injured, but she was found, and it's now this 8-year-old girl who remains missing. Her mother is somewhere in there also digging, also forming part of the search. And I'm going to bring in the aunt of this 8-year-old girl to tell us exactly what happened when the heavy downpours really caused a collapse. We've got Luyanda Mjoka. You're live on Newzroom Afrika. Siyabonga ukuthi ukhulume nathi yize noma isikhathi esikhuluma ngaso kunzima njengamanje. Uma ungaqala ukuchaza ukuthi kwenzakaleni ngoba ubuchaza ukuthi nanka amatshe sibona amatshe amakhulu lapha yana ukuthi ngesikhathi lina imvula kwenzakaleni.
Luyanda Mjoka lona kwaqala ngomsombuluko ngeyikhathi zabo 10 kwaqala kwaqhuma amatshe lapha entabeni athe meqhuma ngabo past 10 aseyaqala kadile amedilika ilaka bese kuwa khona umuzi endlini kwakhona ugogo emxhasweni ngala eceleni kukhona usisi nenono abawuthuna nodadewethu omunye onengane wamuka ugogo omunye udadewethu naye wamuka watholakala lapha ezantsi umntwana ke akakatholakala ugogo uzatholakala ngolesithathu ntambama umntwana namanje sisabheka asakamtholi. Yebo,
ushuthi usisi wakho lo kade simbona la uye naye obekade naye uke walimala naye kade mukile. So njengoba nje osibuka amatshe la ngizicela ukuthi uzakwethu akhombisa ama visuals. Tembekile, you'll see those live visuals of the rocks that Nokuthula says came crashing down from the top of that hill right onto the shack of the Mjoka family, and Gogo, she says, was in the house. Her sister was in the house, as well as the now missing 8-year-old was in the house. Gogo was only recovered, I should say, on Wednesday when this happened on Monday. Her sister survived. She's forming part of the search for the 8-year-old. And as we've been discussing, the 8-year-old remains missing. Nokuthula mhlambe uma ungahamba nathi usikhapha usitshengise ukuthi ugogo utholakale ngoba njengoba sesitshengisile lapha phezulu ukuthi iqale lapha kodwa ngizokuthiwa ugogo nize naye umthola le
emadamini. Utholakale le phansi emadamini ugogo mawehlika njalo ushona lezansi le phansi emadamini hambe egudla yonke le ndlela leni.
And Tembekile, you know, just to explain, there is Umlazi River right at the bottom where we are. So we're going to walk down. Sifuna ukubakhombisa abantu ukuthi kwenzakaleni ngoba uzuwehla uziyofika le ezansi gada kungalimali. And you can see, Tembekile, you know, the corrugated iron that was shifted all the way from the top to the bottom. Gift Nkosi is going to show you right over there just how far down the mudslides collapsed the homes and you know the settlements.
Kulimela nje izindle eningi uhambe egudla eminingi imizi elimela yambe egudla khona ugogo amanzi ayelemaza khona because washona phansi lezansi.
Ugogo nimtholephi?
Simthole phansi lezidamini ngaseduze komfula ocingweni le phansi emfuleni asemlazi. Yebo.
Njani ukuthuka nje manje?
Sathukile asikho kahle hle right sithukile and then siyadinga nanokuthi sihlaphe sithole usizo lwezinja ezokhona ukusimbela bakithi sithole ingane mase sihambe kakhulu isikhathi siyacela nesizo lezinye izinto like akho ID akho lutho sicela uxhaso bakithi. Yebo.
ingane
yentombazane ingane sibaningi lekhaya somndeni omningi kwamuzi umukile asisenakhaya siphelele nje kanje wasikanjeni. Yebo.
Bazofika ke uPremier uzofika ubusushilo ukuthi ufuna izinje ezonsiza nanenye futhi enizolidinga ke.
Nosizo lokusese senze lama ID nekhanda masize noma itende sidinge noma itende ngoba basilala emzini yabantu njengamanje. Sesinaleyo nkinga le ukhokho somthola impela ishuku umngcwabo hasoza sidinga itende la sogusela khona sibasa amakhandlela khona. Yebo.
Alikho ihholo eliseduzane bekuthiwa mhlambe ngaye kulona ngoba uhulumeni ulokho esitshela ukuthi kunamahholo la abantu bangayiswa khona bengakezwa lutho.
Uma sizwe izolo indaba yokuthi sihambeni siye ward sasacupha la kamakhelwane ke. Inkinga sibakubuya isidumbu sosibekaphi makubuya isidumbu nayo inkinga sasibhekene nayo besidingane noma kuyitende kungenani ke. Yebo.
That's Newzroom Mjoka. I'm going to ask my colleague Gift just to turn to his left to show you the mother of this 8-year-old. Igama lengane ubani Newzroom?
Uthofo Luyanda Mjoka. Thofo bizwa ngothofo Luyanda Mjoka. Yena ngiya uma wayo ningakhuluma naye lapha nakanankinga.
The mother of the child is the one in the peach jacket. You can see that she's standing next to a man who is also digging. There's a bit of a stench there. In fact, there's an SANDF chopper to our left that seems to be planning to land at this particular point in time. As I mentioned, there's the Umlazi river and there's a dam there at the bottom. That's where they say, the Mjoka family says they found Okoko on Wednesday after the house collapsed on Monday. But I must tell you, there was a stench. That's because where they're digging is where there's a stench, Tembegile, and that's why they've decided to focus on that particular area.
Iphunga lizwakala manje ekseni usikhona iphunga elapha nje wasengibiwa ifikile inje izolo mayibheka inja le eyodwa kwathiwa isikhathele because besibona nathi usikhathe because ibimanzi bafike sekulethi bathi bambe yanuka kancane yasiyahamba kodwa idlulela khona lapha yana manje senze kufigogo wengane usikhona iphunga lizwakala nabantu bathi bayaleza kwasekuthiwa ambiwe nje wakugudlizwa ihlahla kanje yayana leli phunga bazwayo. Yebo.
Okay, mhlambe osiza sondele mhlambe kudade wena asitshele ke uthembekile we're going to try to move closer to where the digging is taking place and try maybe to speak to the mother, but to translate for those who may not understand what Newzroom was saying, she's basically saying that a sniffer dog did arrive yesterday, but the dog arrived and it was tired, so it doesn't seem like much could be done at that particular point in time, and that this morning they could smell a stench. And this is why they've decided to dig here. Siyabonga kakhulu mbali ukuthi ukhulume nathi kunzima njengamanje.
Yebo sikunzima kakhulu akwamukeleki. Thula ngizokuthola mhla ngayithola ingane yami okwamanje nje akwenzeki lutho.
Manje ubona kungcono mhlambe ukuthi nawe uvele ungene nawe uzothola ingane.
Yebo ngifuna ukuzanelisa. Ngifuna nami ukuzama ngingavele ngihlale phansi. Ngakho nami ngikhandla ukuthi ngimbheke. Mhlawumbe uzoyiveza. Mangimemeza ngiqhubeka ngibheke.
Sisiyeke sidedela ukwazi ukuqhubeka uthola ngani siyaxolisa kakhulu sothemba ukuthi bazokwazi ukumthola umntwana. So that's the mother of the 8-year-old girl that remains missing. You can see Tembekile, she's devastated. I didn't want to speak to her for too long, but basically she's saying the reason why that she's even getting her hands dirty is because she wants to satisfy herself that her child will be found. She says she can't just sit around and watch. She needs to join the efforts to try and find this little girl who remains missing. She says even if she just screams for her, perhaps her child will show herself wherever she is. And she's basically said she's not able to come to terms with where we are at this particular point in time. Remembering, Tembegile, that today is Saturday. This took place on Monday evening, so some time has passed by, and you know it's the it's the stench, Thembekile, that I can also confirm that is where we're standing right now, that is giving the community hope that at least they'll be able to recover this little girl's body. I want to give Nkosi to show you the visuals of the community members here digging. This is what we've been seeing, Thembekile, in many communities, having to take matters into their own hands, not wanting to sit around and wait. And it's commendable, but at the same time there are concerns about whether or not people are trained enough for this. But you can understand the levels of desperation that these community members feel, that they can't sit around and wait for disaster management teams whom they don't even know when they'll arrive. If you just look at the corrugated iron, if you just look at the rocks, just how big they are, you get a sense of the levels of devastation and the state, and try and imagine the state that even Ugogo was found in when they discovered her on Wednesday after the water came pouring down on Monday evening, Thembekile. A really heartbreaking situation that's unfolding as the community continues to dig, as that stench continues to just get stronger, and there is some semblance of hope that at least they will be able to recover the body so that this mother of the 8-year-old can find and come to terms and find some kind of peace and closure of this matter. Remembering, Thembekile, that she too also got injured on Monday evening when their home was caught up in the mudslides.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thank you very much for your reporting on that heartbreaking search. The search by family and neighbors for an 8-year-old girl who is presumed dead and buried under the mud that was swept up in KZN in the flooding this week. That happened on Monday. Today is Saturday, as Ziyanda was saying. We will continue to keep you abreast of developments on that and other devastating stories really emerging from KZN when Newsfeed AM continues after this. Don't go away. Top stories this hour. Hope waning in KwaZulu-Natal this morning as the search for survivors is continuing in KZN. In some areas, we're told operations have now moved from search to recovery. We'll have much more coverage with Ziyanda Ngcobo on a mission to find the remains of an 8-year-old who's believed to have been buried under the rubble from the flooding on Monday. There is some reprieve for motorists in KwaZulu-Natal. Fuel distribution has resumed. Operations had been stopped due to extensive damage along the roads in the province. Meanwhile, the Weather Service has issued an alert for more rainfall in the province this weekend. And in other news, at least 7 people have been killed on the roads in Limpopo during the Easter long weekend so far. Authorities are appealing for caution. Touch after 11 o'clock, you're watching Newsfeed AM with rolling coverage of the developing situation in KwaZulu-Natal. The focus today has very much moved to the desperate search for either survivors or loved ones who are presumed dead following the floods in the province this week. The death toll rose last night to 394, and indications at this stage, based on the various searches that are underway across the eThekwini and other parts of the province, it has become clear that we are likely to pass the 400 mark. Ziyanda Ngcobo is at one of those desperate searches where community members and family are looking for an 8-year-old girl. And Ziyanda, we were just learning in the last few moments that when this little girl came into trouble, her grandmother was also swept away by the flood water.
Certainly, Tembekile, and you can see just to my right that the community is making some progress in terms of trying to dig up the 8-year-old girl. She's the only one who remains missing from the Mjoka family that has befallen that fate of, rubble and being stuck under the mud. That took place on Monday. So the gogo they found, and they were saying, the sister was saying, Nokthula Mjoka, that they need help with a sniffer dog. Another one, there was one that arrived yesterday, but they say the dog seemed to have been tired and it was wet, so it wasn't able to assist much. But it did also sort of lead them to where the community is digging up right now. And this morning they say, another resident said that they could smell a strong stench coming from this particular point of view, and maybe we should just try and move closer and try to speak to them. Tembekile, I must say it's quite something to watch Mbali Mjoka, the mother of the 8-year-old, literally getting her hands dirty as they continue the search for this little girl. She says she won't be able to find any peace by just sitting, that she wants to just be part of the effort to find her. Maybe we can speak to the community. Sabona Sisi, she's just walking away, but you can see this is the mother of the 8-year-old girl, literally digging up herself in this area. The efforts. It seems like that's a pipe, so they're just going to let it go. But earlier on we heard some residents saying that they've even spotted some of her clothes, in the rubble that they tried to save.
But she might be here because impahla zakhe zonke sezithola lana. Sithola khona right round here. So ngenzeka ukuthi ula, that is why sistick la.
Wena uhlala khona la kule ndawo?
Ngihlala khona la kule ndawo, mina ugogo wengane ngihlala ngala kodwa oyizala umfana wami.
Siyaxolisa ke gogo ngesehlakalo ke, mhlambe ungasitshela ukuthi njengoba nilana nje ufika nje emqondweni.
Sisikhathele ukuhlala phansi futhi akukho nala sizothi sihlala phansi khona because nezindlu ezu you see ukuthi izindlu azikho, ukhukhuleke yonke into. Sasala singena lutho umndeni wakamjoka, Mjoka's family wasala ungena lutho, sala dengwane, abana kudla, abana impahla zokugqoka, abana lutho nje. Abazi bazoqala ngamaphi bashone ngamaphi. So sisenkingeni. Mina as a grandma of Luyanda, we lost Luyanda, we're still looking for Luyanda. So njengoba simfuna nje sikhathazekile kumnandanga nakuthini. That is why singahlelanga phansi, sithi singahlali phansi. Ngono nathi siphatha amafosholo, sibambe lapha nalapha. Njengoba sithola neimpahla zengane la somewhere, sithola impahla zengane la sizibeke lapha ya.
Nithole khona la.
Yes, sithole khona la.
Nanephunga futhi nje. Lithanda ukuba strong.
Ukuba strong, yasiyezwa siqalisa lezo nephunga. That is why sababiza kade besebenza bebheka lapha ngenzansi abantu abasilekelelayo. Sidinga usizo nje oluningi, udinga usizo seludingayo. Akhona itent, akhona even councillor akazafiki la, our councillor akazafiki la azobheka as ne disaster la, asina akho lutho umndeni awunalutho, uhleli kuphi udlani wenza ngani, because la two family members la, ugogo nomzukulu wami. Yes, so akaze kufike lutho nje. kwasala dengwane kanjalo kanjalo kompahla
nibiza omakhelwane noma nabo bavele bayifikela nje babona ukuthi nenze kanjani zama ukuthola ukuthi njengoba nilana nje nihlanganise kanjani nihlele kanjani
omakhelwane balondawo le esakhele kuyona abantu abanozwelo nothando akekho memezile ngesuku from day 1 ngelo babusuku kuba ngo Monday from Monday 11:30 babegcwele khona la amanzi abe ekhukhula eshona phansi bagcwala from Monday night bagcwala la until today soloko sila azange silala sikazi uLebuthonga sibazi bafika ekseni until bahambe ngoba 6 late seni bafika intambama late bahambe late
izola ngizokuthiwa ike yafika isniffer dog kodwa bengathi nje ibikhathele kuniphathe kanjani
yes iphathe kabuhlungu ngihambile ngahlala eMarianhill police station ngihleli kwaze kwa late sathola inja A1 ezinathi si understand ukuthi wonke umuntu une problem yabonke abantu bafelwe yabona baluzile ama families abo si understandile lokho sacela sathi only one inja A1 kuze sikwazi isnife around igcikeke bathi i1 sothola A1 izosnifa egcikeni then after ikhathele inja bese ku late ngempela bese isiya nearly to 5 years intambama yes but yasnifa yase bethi kusasa today but bazoza la na izinto zo4 ezo start from the la indlu yakhukhuleka khona behle nayo kanjalo because le muthi uyabhekisisa kahle khona usisi wala ekhaya owatholakala ebambeke lapha ya luckily omunye futhi wala ekhaya umzukulu kagogo naye futhi owatholakala sebambekile lapha luckily wakwazi ukuphamisa ikhanda memezi abafana balenda that is why ngithi abafana balenda ngazi ngebenzelana because ba usizo kakhulu bayinikela ngento bamdonsa bakhona ukumdonsa
uyaphila
waphuma uyaphila ukhona nangu opposiso wasinda la ayimduma
uyena
usendlini wakhona ukusinda wamemeza bamdonsa seze samhambisa samthatha emoto samsesibhedlela ke same night Monday night yes
so kusizile ke at least ukuthi kube khona imoto ukuze nikwazi ukuyisa naye
nomntwana waphukile umntwana from la esinqeni umntwana kambali umbali nabantwana abawu2 phukile from here ukuyosha enzansi ukhonkiwe nje from here uya enzansi yena ke sisa ugcine kwasisika anti kambali ke umntwana
uneminyaka emingaki ke lo
uno 67 years lo
mncane
Luyanda umzukulwana wokuqala
manje njengoba ninelana nje anikaboni lutho nje anikathola usizo from uhulumeni noma mhlambe ama NGOs abantu abafikayo noma ukufika kwethu kuyaqala nje ubona abantu
no one ufikile la akekho wafika la even half of bread no one help us here all these days bayafika abantu basebenze sometimes ngipheke ekhaya nomakhelwane lo uyasiza naye apheke ngala alethele la lo family because the family sale ayinangisho half of bread even quarter or 8 of bread akho gesi akho manzi akho kudla
kwakumunga ngitshela nje igama lakho nje ngenza iphutha ngingabuza
mina nginontombi Candani I'm from Eastern Cape but right now I'm staying here at Sunshine yes ngala ngontaba nje ngale mina kangilenyalelwa lutho just ukuthi kubhidlikile nje ngemuva umuzo right amnankingi
uyabona kodwa njengoba iweather injena nje kuzokwenzakalani
asazi nje nathi siqala ubabhlungu kakhulu khathazeka more than more because iweather njengoba iphindi yaqhubeka usizo lolabasiza ngalabantu luzostaka kanjalo because kuzobe kunetha kunezelela more le migodi embiwayo izophindisa ugcola amanzi so uyabona ukuthi sihlehlela emuva asiqhubekele phambili
ke amafoshola lawo niwatholephi ngiyabona ukuthi at least ke nikwazile ukuthola amafoshola kuyo le ndawo
umakhelwane nomakhelwane uza nefosholo lakhe azosebenza njengokubona nabesifazana abazana amagejo makhelwane nomakhelwane uza nefosholo lakhe loya umfana wami loya lo ubaba wengane lo ufaka into yes ubaba wengane
Okay, ngicela ukubamba kancane gogo Thembekile. The father of the 8-year-old is also part of the efforts. He's the one in the blue shirt. He is also digging in the search for the 8-year-old Luyanda Mjoka. You would have heard from Gogo here telling us that there was another 7-year-old, the sister to Luyanda, who is missing, who is now, it seems, paralyzed from the waist down. She is 7 years old and she is now staying with relatives at a different area. But basically, there's been absolutely no assistance, they say, even from the councillor of this area. And this is an issue we've been speaking about the coordination of the government and them centralizing, these relief efforts, and that some councillors on the ground have either been non-existent and a no-show, or the councillors who have been on the ground have just also been rendered useless in many aspects, because even when they make requests for water tanks or food relief to come, they have to go back then to the municipality or the province to actually have them release all the resources to be able to dispense in the communities.
And Ziyanda, as we speak to you briefly, we're looking now at the most heartbreaking pictures you were just showing us. A mother and father shoveling through soil, trying to find their missing 8-year-old daughter. Yesterday we heard from 2 young men, Gosnati and Smiso. They each lost a mother, a father and a brother, and watched it all happen. I think it is also important to reflect on just the trauma, the horrors that many of these families have witnessed, which will stay with them for life.
It's a nightmare, Thembekile, that these families can never forget. They will tell you that, yes, they can go for counseling, yes, they can go for therapy, but what they are going through is something they'll never forget. With this Mjoka family, it's even worse, because this took place on Monday night. It's now Saturday. You will be haunted just by the stench of this place now, where the logs are, where they're currently digging. And as I was saying to you earlier, that as they continue to dig, the stench becomes stronger and stronger. At this point in time, judging from what the Gogo said here, as well as the mother, they at least want some kind of peace and closure in terms of recovering Luyanda Mjoka's body at the very least, because they cannot just sit around and wait for help that they don't even know whether or not it is even on the way. So they're hoping that the sniffer dogs will be able to help expedite this process that is currently underway. But you would have heard then from the paternal grandmother of Luyanda that they have not slept since Monday night. They have no electricity, have no water, and you would have said not even half a loaf of bread. They've had to rely on the spirit of Ubuntu that's been displayed by the neighbors. And I must say, here at Thembekile, in those visuals, you'd have seen both men and women, young and old, picking up spades and digging. The paternal grandmother was telling us that everybody who's come, they didn't even have to be called. They all picked up their spades, asked what was needed of them, and joined the effort that you're currently seeing underway right now.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, we'll come back to you again on that developing story. The search continuing for those of you just joining us for an 8-year-old girl who is now presumed to have been killed in the floods in KwaZulu-Natal. The death toll, to remind you, is currently sitting at 395.